Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another chapter of Experiencer Interviews. And today we've got another amazing story coming to us from the US. We have Adam Burns on today. Adam is a novelist and works by day as a designer. He lived on Greyhound buses for a year writing his first novel and adapted his second into a feature screenplay. His third novel is currently being edited, a dystopian sci-fi about humanity's urgent need to evolve. The book goes into the alien experiencer life, and the beings he's in contact with have helped him get the facts and details right. They want this discussion out in the mainstream. We are not alone. We never have been. We are in great danger, and it's time we faced our future. While working as an art teacher on the Hopi Reservation, Adam saw a gray alien standing right in front of him. Then it walked behind some trees and was gone. Years later, he investigated this via hypnosis and uncovered a lifetime of contact. Several beings have been visiting Adam and giving guidance and support. A mantid being, a small white gray, a hybrid, and a different kind of gray. Adam wakes up with scoop marks, puncture wounds, and bruises. He also had a visit from the Men in Black while at the hospital and has had many UFO sightings. Adam's story appears in Lester Velez's book about the alien experience called The Unknown Other and the Existential Proposition of Alien Contact, and has also appeared twice on Linda Moulton Howe's Earth Files YouTube channel. So Adam, thank you so much for coming on, brother.
Thank you.
Now, can you get a bit into where you're from and how your childhood was?
Okay. I'm English. I was born in England and I was raised in New Zealand and England. My parents were just restless. They moved back and forth many times. Had a happy childhood, uneventful apart from a lot of travel. And I did have a lot of recurring nightmares, 3 different recurring nightmares that I've only sort of in recent years put the pieces together and realized were definitely related to the Greys. The main one was I would be sitting opposite another bed, like a childhood bed, like a small kid's bed. And there's an old man opposite me who's bald and very, very white skin, and it's very dark, and his eyes are just dark circles, and he's just sitting there like this, and he just talks really, really slowly, and then just talks faster and faster and faster until the bottom of his face is a blur, and I just wake up like screaming. And that was one nightmare. Another one was, remember a children's book, Charlie's Purple Crayon, where he draws the wall and anything he draws comes to life. Well, I was like that as a kid, and in the dream, I'm Charlie, and I'm walking along with this crayon, which is gray, not purple, and I just start drawing a tree, but it becomes a whale instead, and I'm sort of trying to draw a whale, and then it just becomes this big teardrop shape, like the top half of a whale, with 2 big black eyes, almond shaped, just leaning over me, and as it's leaning over me, I wake up screaming. And that was the other recurring nightmare. But later on, I guess I had the dreams explained to me. The recurring dream about the old man was actually very meaningful, and one of the Greys I've been in contact with explained that to me and showed me some things, which I guess I'll talk about in a little bit. My alien experience really began. I've never been into this stuff or believed in it. I like sci-fi, but I never considered any of this stuff to be relating to my life, any experience of stuff. But I volunteered as an art teacher on the Hopi Reservation on a project out of Northern Arizona University. I was traveling on the buses, writing my first book, my novel, and I just heard about it and was like, sure, I'll go there. And it was basically the village elders wanted volunteers to run a summer camp for the kids. And Northern Arizona University sort of helped them do that. And we were just basically hands. We were just people there to help with the kids and help them teach their stuff to their kids. And it was a tremendous honor to be there. Although I'm an artist, I don't really have much to share as a teacher, I was just lucky to be there. But we were all sitting there outside the trailer they'd given us one night, and none of us are drinking or doing any drugs. We couldn't bring anything in. We couldn't even bring cameras or pens or paper. They're very strict. we were just sitting there talking and laughing at the end of a tiring but very happy day. And I saw a gray alien standing about 15 feet in front of me. And it was the classic small white gray. It was about 4 feet high with a very large almond-shaped head and the almond-shaped black eyes and impossibly thin neck, too thin to be a human from anywhere. And long fingers, very long hands, long arms, so that they hung like below its waist, like short legs. And it was just standing there staring at me, and we just stared at each other for a few seconds. And then it just turned and slowly walked behind to its left, which put it behind this very large pinon tree, which at night is just a big black blob. And I was like, what was that? And I ran out to it, and we all ran out looking for it, but it just wasn't there. And like many experiences with these weird experiences, I never gave it a thought. I just didn't think about it anymore after that. And I don't know why I would not think about it. Later on, I sort of once in a while would think, oh yeah, I saw an alien once. But then I would think about that. I wouldn't think, what did that mean? I just didn't think about it. It was peculiar, you know?
How old were you at the time?
Late 20s.
Okay.
28 or 29, I think.
So you had these experiences as a kid and nothing happened until the age of 28, roughly.
There was something else that happened in between that I never realized was alien until later.
Okay.
But basically, okay, I'll get to that then. So there was the dreams, and then I had a very bad road accident when I was 17, hit by a car going about 50 when I was on a bicycle, and I was a lot of smashed up bones and thrown a long way, and landed on my head and had, you know, concussion. But while I was unconscious for a week, it was very serious. And I made a full recovery, but there was like, I was in plaster for 6 months. I was very, very ill. I died in the ambulance briefly, and it was certainly serious. Through the first months of recovery, I kept seeing these white shapes appear at the corner of my vision, and that were also teardrop shaped. They were just like, you know, heavy at one end and going down to a point, and white, but you could just about see through them, like a really thick cloud, and definitely solid with like a hard line around the edge, and they just float up like this, and I'd see them, and then they just float away, and disappear, and it would be from either side, and it happened a lot. I mean, they just kept happening, and I thought maybe I don't know what I thought, to be honest. I certainly didn't think it was aliens. I just thought it was just part of my injuries or something. But I don't know. But that was the only other thing I can recall since between the nightmares and that, before seeing this gray. And then I didn't think about it at all. And later on was writing another book where one of the characters is an abductee, and I wanted to be respectful to abductees, and just be really fair, like not turn the book into one of these Hollywood stories where it's a big car chase to kill the monster at the end, and anyone who's an experiencer who is horrified. You know, I wanted to be really faithful and just read about it. So I read a lot of transcripts of regressions, and I was stunned by how much people from all over the world were having the same experiences, the same aliens doing the same things to them with the same instruments in the same order. And it was like, whoa, you know? And so I was really impressed. And then there was something in these, the bios and life experiences of these people that were a lot of things that were similar to mine. And I was like, I forget what it was that was a trigger, but something made me do one of those goofy tests you see online, like, are you an abductee? And it's 100 questions or something, or whatever the amount of questions, you know, there's a percentage. And I did like 2 or 3 of them, and I got like 85, 90% on all of them. And I was like, I should check this out, because I did see that gray that time, and I did a regression. And it was then that it all exploded. I did a regression, and in that regression, I was laying on a pliant table. It was cool, and I was naked, and I was in a gray room with just soft, directionless light, and everything is just gray, 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 like, but a sort of warm, soft gray. And then I'm aware that there's this being looking leaning right over me that was insect-like. It was, all I could see was the scales between its eyes, and they were about 1 inch by 2 inches. And there was like 2 of them. I can't remember how many, to be honest, but they were, I could just see some scales that were between the bridge of its eyes and the side of one eye. And its head was completely at a right angle, like this, like it was looking over me like this. And that would be its body. And it was really close. I could see the scales they were brown with a greenish center, like a lime, very bright avocado green center. They had paws with tiny hairs in the center that dipped down each scale. And in between the scales were dark brown with little hairs. And the eye was dark brown, and I could see ommatidia, the hexagon-shaped thousands of lenses, like an insect eye. And I just saw that part of the eye and that part of the face, and then it leaned back, and I didn't feel threatened at all. I felt completely calm. And then it leaned back, and then I saw a gray doing just doing the same thing, just coming over me, and in the same sort of angle, but not at a hard right angle like that one was. And it was actually something like straight up. And that one was also so close, I could have like touched its forehead if I just moved slightly. And also I couldn't move, I could only move my head a little, but I couldn't move my body. And there's like an electric feeling vibration that runs through you when they keep you still. And if you try to move, it doesn't hurt, but it's really unpleasant. It's like, I've had like electric shocks twice from like trying to fix lawnmowers when I was a teenager, and like I know what that feels like. It throws you across the lawn, and it's very, very intense. And this wasn't like that. It felt vaguely like that, but it was much milder. But it just like it hurt the more you tried to move. And if you just moved a little, there's just this feeling of like a continual vibration, most of all in the ends of your fingers. And that feeling I've had with them every time I met them, even pleasant things. I always feel that vibration in my hands. And so anyway, this gray is leaning over me, and it was like an older gray. Its head was huge. Oh, the mantid's head was huge. It was like 2 feet and maybe 2.5 feet high, and very, very narrow, with a pointed chin and a tiny slit of a mouth, and like hairs, like tendrils out of the side of its head behind its eyes. And the gray was also a very large head, like about 2 feet high, and very, very bulbous at the top. And it had a very heavy brow over the almond-shaped black eyes, so that it looked what we would term as a very theatrical, evil face, like when you do that. Yeah. But the feeling I got from both of them was love and caring. And the strange thing with the gray was, like, more than with the mantid, the gray had zero emotion. It wasn't like a doctor, or what I would imagine a scientist or a military doctor might be, like very steely bedside manner. It was just not there. There was no emotion. And that feeling of being in the presence of a complete absence of emotion was more shocking to me, strangely enough, than the wilder faces of these beings, you know? It was like, it really hit home powerfully. This is alien. I mean, if I probably should have cottoned on with the way they look, but I mean, that's when it really, really gave me a chill that this is extremely real and extremely alien.
Did you figure out how tall they were? Because, you know, grays and mantids do tend to be different. So
yes, because I've seen the mantid many times, and also after the gray did the staring procedure, last thing was just that his experience was, its description was, it had wrinkles around its lips. I mean, it had no lips. It had a tiny slit for a mouth, but its mouth was probably about the same size as mine. But the thing is, its head was so large that it was like a teeny slit, and it had cracks around like an old person has around their lips, and warm gray skin like an elephant, like not cold. That's just all I wanted to say about it. But then when it moved away, and I could sort of move my head a little bit and see down me, they were both standing at my feet, like basically next to each foot, you could say, or between my feet, very close next to each other. And the mantid was about 7.5, 8 feet tall, definitely 7.5 feet tall, I guess, because I'm 6 foot. And the gray was about 5'6", It was tall, but it was like the mantid was substantially taller, but also had a more pointy head.
Yeah.
But there was definitely a height difference. And to my right, there was two other beings working on my leg between my knee and on my shin, and they were like small greys, but they had smaller heads, and I could just see the sides of their faces, and they were flat, with smaller almond-shaped eyes, and just smaller heads that weren't so bulbous. And they were blue. They were like a turquoisey blue with a gold glow around their skin. And there was two of them that looked identical to me, both pretty small, like 4'6". And however the table was positioned, their elbows were at a right angle, so they comfortably worked on my leg. And they did that throughout the entire abduction. They just were doing something to my leg, and I had no idea what that was.
So you haven't seen any medical instruments at all?
No, there was two instruments came out of the ceiling later. In terms of instruments, there was one thing was a black rectangle with lines coming out of it. It appeared earlier, and then I became unaware of it when I was sort of communicating with them. Well, actually, at that point, when other things were being done to me, because there was also two other beings doing things to my head, like palpating my head, and then they stuck their fingers in my mouth, and then my jaw just locked from side to side, like rigidly, and my head was just still. They weren't physically doing it; it was doing it on its own, and then it just locked like this, and then one of them lifted my finger like that on my left hand and was doing something. They did the same with my left leg. So there was other beings doing, I think, were small white greys doing something else like that, and were doing something with my stomach. So there was various things going on. But while all of that was going on, there was the rectangle with the lines above. There was also, I was aware there were like metallic drawers that were sticking out at different, like some were more open than others, and they were cuboid, and they were like, just everything was gray. It's not, you could sort of, it's kind of like metal, but it could be a combination of metal or plastic or something, just completely not of this earth. I guess none of it was. But the drawers were everything is like matte, like a matte photograph. But the tops of them were like mercury. They were soft, and they moved a little. They were loose, like a drawer top filled completely with mercury. And they were silvery at the top, and they were open at different, I think there's two or three of them open at different points. And then the other instrument was, I was aware that the light just divided like an X, and I couldn't figure out why the light had divided into 4 parts. And then I realized it was an X, and it had turned to a plus shape, and it just came down over me, and it just kept on going and came right through me, and I couldn't figure out how that was possible, but I couldn't see it all. They were just like lines. I couldn't see very well because it was, my head couldn't move my head, and also everything is very foggy, and it was a dome-like room, but you can't really see where it begins and ends. And true to every single experience I've had with them, it's all foggy. Everything is foggy. Things come in and out of focus all the time. And I think even when they're trying to show you things, they're really cagey. They really kind of like just release it compartmentally. And so however I'd broken through with the hypnotherapist, it was still vague. It was a sequence of events, and they didn't stop, but they may not have been exactly chronologically connected. There might have been gaps. And then we had a conversation. I asked them, we talked for about 20 minutes that I can recall. And I asked them things like, have you known me all my life? They said yes. And I asked them, will you explain what's going on? And they said, we can't. And then, and it's all telepathic. And when they speak, you always know who's talking, but you hear it in your head. It doesn't have an actual voice. It doesn't have like a mantid's voice and a grey's voice, or a high or a low voice or anything. It's just the thought. They just share the thought, and you hear it. Just like if you were to think, shit, I think I left the oven on. I mean, when you think that, it doesn't have a voice, does it? It
No.
doesn't have an actual recognizable voice, even your own. It's a
hear
thought.
it, yeah.
Yeah, and that's how all their thought, all their communication is. But you can tell who's talking. You can tell if all of them answer at once. You can always tell. It's just part of the business of telepathy. Not that I'm telepathic any way in life. It's just something they do, and they initiate it when you're with them, you know?
Okay.
So we had a conversation, and I asked them if they'd done with my life. I said yes. And I asked them if I'd ever understand this, or they would explain what's going on. They said, we can't. I said, will I ever understand it? They said yes. And I asked them if they understood the meaning of the word honor, and they said yes. And mostly I was talking to the Mantid, but sometimes both the Mantid and the Grey would answer together. And they said yes. And I said, because I'm okay with you doing this, because I have no reason to assume that there's a problem here, but it would be honorable, since I'm agreeing to this, for you to explain what's happening to me. We would call that honorable. If we had a patient and we were explaining something that we needed from them, it would be honorable to explain, at least in part, what's happening. And they said, we can't.
There you go.
So that was the end of that. But
all that for nothing.
Yeah, but I wanted them to know that I was comfortable with them, and that I thought they were beautiful, and the differences are what make us beautiful. I talked about a security guard in the building where I worked that had an African-American gentleman who's got really, really dark skin, the darkest I've ever seen. It was really, really black with white hair, and really, really white hair. And he looks spectacular. You know, it's a great look. And I said how the differences among us are what make us beautiful. That's beauty, the difference. And I see the same with you. And they said, that's how we feel. And then I don't remember what else we talked about, but I remember then the next thing I can remember right now is I was aware of an eye really close. And it was a black iris with a very thin green dilated pupil and a little bit of white at each side. So it was like somewhere between teardrop, like almond shaped, and somewhere between our own eye shape if it was angled. Okay. Like imagine our eyes angled, but really big, like this big. Sorry, the cat's just freaking out. You could just see the one eye. So here it would be this person's right eye and my right eye. And then she leaned back and I could see this face, and it was a hybrid female with huge eyes, like proportionally to my face, like this big. And then a tiny, tiny little nose and a tiny little mouth that was pink with actually with lips, not lipless like the Greys, and an extremely pointy chin. And then this tiny little face with these big eyes, and then a fairly large head with blonde hair, whitish hair. She said she was my daughter. She was a hybrid. And I said she looked beautiful. And we all talked, and I can't remember what else we talked about right now. But that was pretty much the end of it. That was the end of my first regression. But subsequently, I've met with the Mantid many times, with the small white many times, and with the hybrid, and with another Grey that wasn't there in that experience.
Did you figure out if the Grey that you saw on the reservation plus this new batch were like working together?
Yes, because on my second regression, I had 2 more regressions, and I couldn't seem to make a connection. Someone had said something to me, and it had broken my confidence, and I thought I was crazy, and I just didn't have the comfort in myself to sort of make that connection. So it took several times, and then with a different hypnotherapist, I was able to make a connection, and she took me back to the night on the reservation where I saw the Grey, and placed me next to it on that night, and as a third person. So I'm standing next to the Grey, and I can see my younger self over there on the steps seeing the Grey. And it was just a kind of placement within the method of hypnosis to initiate a contact. And then that it's from then on that everything is really blown open, because once I get into that hypnotized, that state of meditative state through hypnotherapy, which I can never quite get to meditating on my own. But once I get to that place, they come to me and we meet. It's as though I'm on their wavelength and they go, oh, great, there's Adam. Let's do another session. Because they want to share things, they want to teach us. And I asked that Grey as my present, Adam in the present, in a hypnotic state, trying to communicate with that Grey at that time. And it communicated with me. And that's when I realized that they are, several things through that session actually made me understand. They're not bound by time and space the way we are, which is why they can, when I get into the right hypnotic state, they, will come and show me things. To them, they see it all at once and they move freely through it. And I saw that during this second session. I call it the second one just because it's the second successful one. And I asked this Grey, was it an accident that I saw you, or did you reveal yourself to me for some reason? And it said, we wanted you to see me. We wanted you to see us. And I said, why? And it said, because we knew that later, when you were ready, you would explore and come looking for us, and then we would communicate with you when you were of the right kind of mind. Because I was pretty immature, I was a chain smoker, hard drinker, I was an idiot, and I was definitely not empathetic enough to really be worth talking to, quite honestly, for them, and I don't blame them. So much later, I've ended up building this relationship with them. But the regression sort of put me in a state where I could communicate freely with the Grey and see what the Grey was seeing, or maybe the Grey showed what it was seeing. And I saw that it was seeing daylight and nighttime at the same time. And I could see that spot on the Hopi Reservation that we all knew so well because we spent a lot of time there. And it was like daylight and nighttime at the same time. It was all like a translucent, like double image. And I could see a UFO or a ship, small ship behind the pinon tree, directly above, but a little behind and above where I saw the Grey. And it was a disc-shaped craft about 30 feet across, and it was glowing. It was a silver. You could see it was silver, but it was glowing sort of an orangey color, an amber color behind in the night. But because I could see daylight and nighttime, it was also silver, I think. And so the next thing that happened in that session was it explained, taught me a lot of things as a child. And I asked what kinds of things, and it said how to move things with your mind, how to move through solid matter, and how to move shapes, shapes of light. And I asked if that had anything to do with the fact that I've always had dreams of flying, still do, and I love them. I feel fantastic when I'm flying for some reason, and it's just a goofy thing that's surreal and part of dream life, isn't it? And they've said that in other times when we've talked about that's part of, and it mentioned this here, part of being taken apart and put back together again. And they said, you were very comfortable with this, and not everybody is. And I said, what is that? And it's where it's on an atomic level. They take your body apart and then they put you back together again. Like when experiences go through walls, and I've gone through the walls here in this room, through the window in the wall up to a ship one time. And when you do that, they're on an atomic level breaking you apart. Then they transport you up into their ship, which is physically here in this dimension. And then they put you back together again, and you're in the ship physically in their dimension. And then they do whatever they need to do with you physically, which is a whole other discussion. And it's two very big things that they do. Then they break you apart again, bring you back down, and put you back together again. And that is an interesting thing, I think, to me, in that it's physical. It's not all some sort of dimensional, metaphysical, dreamy thing. They need our bodies. They need us physically there, and they need us to be put back together again correctly. I'll try to keep moving because so many things happen, and it would just, I'll just go on for hours. But then the next thing I saw is myself as a light being. I was aware that I was just like human form and no bigger, but I was the same size as the Grey instead of a lot taller. And I was it's like, you know, opal has like flecks in it that are all like at odd angles. It was like a soft, creamy white light, and you couldn't see through me. It was a solid white light, but the flecks are even brighter light that are moving around within, and like they might be this sort of size, just moving around within me. And my hands and my feet tapered off to nothing, and I sensed that that's how my head was too. And I'm like this with the Grey. And then I watched the young Adam on the steps, sitting there in long hair and crazy looking clothes I'd never wear now, just float up, and his legs just hung loose as he went up, and he's just sort of staring straight ahead and floats up, and the ship is now above him, above the trailer. And then I go up with the Grey. The Grey just gave me this sense of happiness. It sort of, I sensed that it threw its arms up like this, but I also sensed that it hadn't moved at all. It just gave me the feeling that it was doing that. There's a lot of things on multiple levels with them that are very ethereal and just giving you a sense of things. And so I felt this happiness, and they wanted me to come. It wanted me to come with it. And I said sure. And then we just floated up together up into the ship, and then there's no other Adam up there. When I get there, I'm just there, and I'm this light being standing there, and there are 5 or 6 Greys about the size of the 5-foot one, and they're moving around, and it's really dark. It's gray, light, directionless, but it's darker than the other room. It seemed that way to me. And then there's a hallway going off to the right with a silhouetted, very tall, very thin figure at one end. And then I move along the hallway, and I'm standing in front next to it, and it's the Mantid. And the Mantid is substantially taller than me. And then we both drift back until we're in the dome-shaped room. And then I realized that the small white Greys and there's beings of different heights, and they're sort of silhouetted. It's so dark, it's hard to see what's going on. But they have the body shape of Greys. And I'm, with the Mantid, and then I'm aware there's another light being exactly like me, same height, same shape, same texture and everything. And they said, this is the source. The Mantid said, this is the source. And I'm an atheist, and I'm like, great, so you're telling me I've met God, And they just said, this is the source. And then that's all I remember right now of that one. Then we are, to be honest, I think it's before. Yes, it's before we went up. I get confused. It's before we went up. The Grey showed me something troubling about the future, and I'm standing next to the Grey, next to the pinon tree, and the young Adam's over there on the trailer, and there is this black mass starts to appear. It seeps up out of the ground like oil, and it just gets spreads out, and at the end it's crystalline like coal, almost pixelated with very hard square edges, but lots of them, like it's all pixelated, and it just keeps moving and spreading out, and it comes right up to my feet, and it begins to bubble and form a mound, and then out of the mound comes this green, blue, and white dome, and I realize it's the top of the Earth, about a third of the Earth showing, like with the like not going quite down to the equator, the mass sort of separates, and it's there. It's as though it rises out of it. And let me get it right, because I asked them, why am I seeing the black? And it said, because it's the future. And I said, how is my future black? And they said, because it is death. And I said, why am I seeing it? And they said, it is the future. And I said, is it the future of Earth? And they said, yes. So they were saying a lot of death is coming. But I do think that there is something else to be gained from this, in that I saw the black first, then I saw the earth rise out of it. And the earth looked beautiful and clean, like the white was clouds on the top, like when you see the earth from space. So my reading of that is that there's a lot of death coming, but that earth rises out of it and there is a future. Just putting it in bullet points kind of thing. They could be very oblique. And as the sessions have gone on, I've asked them more and more direct questions and got more direct answers. It's been a learning process. I do think, just to jump ahead to something I figured out, well, they've told me, they have a really strong prime directive, like the prime directive in Star Trek. It's like rigid with them. They really, really believe that they cannot share something with us that will change our future so that we don't discover it on our own. And they take that from a macro to a micro level. They are super intense about that. And I do, my theory from all the different things I've had conversations I've had with them and a few specific things they've said is that they've said things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. And they have, I think, and they've said that they can't intervene to stop it. But I do think they're going to intervene when it gets to a point where if they don't, we're screwed. Like humanity is over. Perhaps because the environment, there's no water left, there's no polar ice caps left, or something like that, or perhaps a nuclear situation. I don't know, but something, perhaps a form of a different pandemic, but I don't know. But whatever it is, that it gets so bad that if they don't do anything, it would be an action against humans. You know, there is a tipping point. And I think that they are waiting for that and they won't do anything. But what they are doing is the whole hybridization project, the whole business of the abductions, ever since the 40s, is increasingly so. It's been building up. I feel it's really important to talk about this. They have been taking humans, millions of humans. I asked them how many, they said many millions. So I really, really am not special. I am not some person with a massive ego trying to get attention, you know? I don't want the attention. I want attention as a writer. I don't want attention for this, but they want me to talk about this. And what they are doing is to a lot of people, and none of us are particularly special. But what it is they are they are teaching us and they are enhancing us in the most subtle ways so that we will be able to help later when things get worse. And I have no idea what that means, but that is what they've said they're doing. And I should talk about another regression, which leads to something that really explains what's going on with the hybridization project, or with abductions per se. This was another regression, and this time I met with a Grey who was not one of the ones from the first couple of regressions. This one was, it has a smaller head. It looks like a Grey, but it's like a much smaller head, and probably about the same size as ours, but just a little bit more going on at the back, and almond-shaped eyes, but big black eyes, but not huge ones like theirs, like really quite small almond-shaped eyes, and almost some personality in the face, like a little bit of expression in the face, like just a little bit more, quite a sweet, petite face, but very Grey-like. And one time when I saw just the side of its head really closely for a moment, it had like scales that were about just a bit bigger than a centimeter, and they were hexagonal, and it had a greenish white tint, like a bottom of a snake, belly of a reptile, but super smooth. Like you would swear there was no scales at all. And every time I've seen it, I've just thought it had grayish, white, smooth skin. But that one time I did get a peek at its skin, and it's a really kind, benevolent being. And I went back and asked it why, well, in a session I asked to speak to anyone, and it appeared, and I asked it why did I have those nightmares as a kid of the old man? Was that me as an old man? or was it a gray? What was it? And then I am floating along with this being, and I'm about the same size as it. So I've got smaller, and I look down at my hand, and I had a scar. You can't see it anymore on the top of my hand. I could see it, but it's like used to be really pronounced. It was something when I was born, I bashed something, and I always had a circular scar here. And I could see that it was the way it used to look, sort of reddish and round. And my hair was long. I had long hair as a kid, and I realized I was 7 or 8. And also the schoolyard we were floating along had benches that were normal size. And I went back there when I was 15. This was in New Zealand. And the benches were so small, I almost hit my chin with my knee when I sat down. It was crazy. And they looked normal. So I was a little kid size. And we were floating along about a foot above the ground, just floating along past the benches. And then we floated up until we were a couple of 100 feet up, and I could see the whole school, the buildings. And then I didn't experience going through the atmosphere, but the next thing I know, we're just standing in space, and there's all these beautiful stars around us, just mostly black, but a lot of stars. No, I couldn't recognize any particular constellation, but then it sort of put its hands out, and there was a line of light appeared, and then it did that, and it became like a circle of light, like a ring. And then it wanted me to step through it, so I stepped through it. And they do things like that are to help your mind cope with the shock of what you're experiencing. I don't think there was a circle. I don't think that it was a portal that it had in its hand. I mean, we can't be too literal with a lot of this stuff. And then there's certain things where they make it clear that this is meant to be literal. And it's just something you start to pick up over time. But at least that's the way I interpret it. But in any case, I step through, and then we're both standing in space, and it's another place, like a different set of constellations, and I can see the Orion Nebula. And I'm like, is that the Orion Nebula? And it's like I've seen it in photographs where it has all the bright colors, but you can see the main stars of the three at the top and the belt and so on. And it said yes. And then we just sort of moved towards it. And then we have quite a conversation about it, and I asked why I was seeing that, and they said you're from here, and I said, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm a human, and I know where I'm from, and it said, and it showed me this being that looked exactly like it. It was a gray being, like with the smaller head. And just laying there looking very dead on this table of white light, just a rectangle that was white light with nothing below it, just like a plane. And I said, why am I seeing this? And they said, this is you. And I don't know if it was unconscious or dead, but my feeling was that it was dead. And I said, why am I showing you this? And it said, because you have left this body to come to Earth to be a part of something very big that a lot of people are doing. And a lot of beings, and not just beings who look like this one, are doing this. That's what, when people say starseeds, it sounds really cosmic, like I should be in a drum circle around a bonfire or something. But I mean, the whole starseeds thing is that it's incarnating here for a purpose and leading a normal human life with nothing special about it, but gradually being awakened by these beings, by a different set of beings that are here doing the abductions. And while I was there, they introduced me to a family that look like that are there, and they miss me very much. And then I was aware that all around the stars got brighter, and then I saw thousands of faces. They looked like Greys, but they were all slightly different, and they weren't all Greys, but that was my take on it, that I just recognized a lot of Greys, and they were just all there, and I wanted to touch them, but I just felt that they were touching me, but it was not like they were reaching out, like they with their minds, they were just reaching out like a feeling of love. And it was just this feeling that that I was just a part of something that a lot of other people are a part of, that's huge, that is there to help humanity. That we're all part of this process that will reveal itself sequentially. So that being said, the the regressions, the abductions, people that are, there's more than one group doing the abductions. There are several entire groups, like sets of different beings with different agendas here. And one group is the ones I've been in contact with: the Mantid, the elder grey, the small white grey, those blue beings, and the hybrid, and this being from Orion, are all part of you could call it a consortium, a group that are trying to help humanity without breaking their prime directive. And the way they don't break the prime directive is by only abducting people that they have incarnated here, by giving their permission to be abducted prior to incarnating here. So that being on that table made a mental contract of some kind, like, I give you permission to take an earth body when I'm in it, and then incarnated as here as Adam. And there's many, many others doing that to many other people. And then they gradually, the beings that are physically here in the ships that are abducting people, go through a process of awakening people, which is why many, many experiences are in their 40s and 50s and older. And then they recall childhood experiences, and then having sexual, not sexual, but reproductive things done to them. Obviously, sperm from men and eggs from women, and 3-month term pregnancies with women that then mysteriously abort and are gone. And that whole process, for people that haven't got to a point of awakening, is extremely stressful and abusive and non-consensual. And then there are other beings that are doing things to us that are non-consensual, that are awful, and they're the ones doing the cattle mutilations. And there are other beings that are trying to take this planet, that have always wanted this planet. There's a lot of really bad shit going on. And then there's this group who are trying to help us. So it's confusing. And there are many different kinds of greys. There are the small whites, there's the elder greys, there's other kinds. My understanding is that there are thousands of planets across many star systems with greys on it. And many of them share this positive agenda. They call it service to all, as opposed to service to self. And there are many entire, cultures and planets and species that are just all about self. And some of them are here, and they're trying to take this planet and trying to cause pain, and they feed off our pain and suffering. They feed off our death. There are others that are all thinking, that are trying to do service to us before it's too late, because we screw it up for ourselves the way we're doing with the environment, or because we're just not equipped to deal with these entities that are trying to take us. So in this really complicated way, they're trying to help us without breaking their prime directive. So the hybridization program operates to physically get sperm and eggs for the hybridization process, which is several steps. So I don't know how many series it takes to get to a human looking hybrid that has like a gray mind and consciousness, that has telepathy and telekinetic abilities, that is extremely advanced psychically. But somewhere in between, there is the hybrid, like my daughter that I met, that is, you can see, partly human and partly gray. And the reason they can actually mix zygotes and mix our genes and DNA and do this is that we're all related. One of the things they talk to me about on a spiritual level is that we're all one family, we're all connected, we're all one across everywhere, all beings, even the ones you don't like that are self-serving, we're still related. And also messing with DNA and updating human bodies, their bodies, is normal across multiple cultures. It's like going and getting a new set of tires for your car that have white rims because you just think that looks better. If you think you need to be bipedal, you'll go and do some physical changes to your DNA to make yourself bipedal. And so whatever they want, they all do it. There's no moral problem with that. They don't see that the way we do, like, oh, you can't operate on an embryo, whatever. The various belief systems have their various thoughts on that. But they don't. and it's just common across multiple species. So it's not impossible. Like when you make a hybrid here, you make a, what is it? Is it an ass you make out of it, or a mule you make out of an ass and a donkey? I never quite got that right, but whatever one it is, the hybrid cannot reproduce. You have to make it. As I understand it, I'm not a scientific person.
Have they ever told you the whole reason why they're doing this whole hybridization thing?
Yes, the main thing is that they talk about a thing called the change, and they were very oblique about that, and then they've gradually released more and more information on that as time's gone by. They're very careful not to overwhelm. I think partly they think if they overwhelm, they'll lose us, or they'll freak us out, and we will go down a different tunnel of thought, you know? By the way, people who are having horrible abduction experiences, I'm not trying to say they're not as advanced as me because I'm having lovely spiritual ones. I'm saying there are terrible beings doing terrible things, and then there's rapes, there's this awful things with many different beings, and then there's experiments being done that are like the hybridization thing, that are by bad beings, we could say, that are terrible experiences. And I'm not belittling that or saying that in any way that's less important or less meaningful than what I'm going through. It's hell for these people. They're in shock, you know? I'm just saying there's a group of good beings, and those are the ones that I've experienced. I've also experienced some bad shit, but I mean, the ones that I'm focusing on, I keep thinking love and light and projecting positive energy, and they keep coming back to me, and it's become a relationship of sorts. So the hybridization program is to over several generations, and they just keep on cycling that, so that they've had these human looking hybrids for decades now that totally pass for human. And by the way, it's not just white people. It's all races, all pigmentation of this one species that we are here. When you get to a third or fourth generation, however many it is, they totally look human, but they have really powerful abilities. And those ones are actually introduced onto Earth and literally live here and are placed here as they continue this process and get more and more and more and more. And as they continue to train people like me and I have no recollection of what that is, but at a certain point, that tipping point when humanity is screwed, those hybrids will awaken whatever it is they've been teaching all of the abductees like me, so that we will be able to help them with telekinetic abilities to do something that will help whatever situation humanity is in. And again, I'm not special. I don't have a messianic complex. This is millions, many millions of people who are just conscripted to do this. And it's just part of something that if you get enough people, you can make a difference. And on a psychic level, you can. Interestingly, science has proven that you can change matter by your thought processes. You can change the crystalline structure of a snowflake by the kinds of thoughts you think. And they have recorded this and repeated this. This is mainstream science. So there's a lot we need to learn about what we can do with our minds, and we only use a small part of our minds. So, you know, as outlandish as this stuff sounds, it's on track with what's opening up in physics and string theory more and more. And so the hybridization program is to create these hybrids that can physically cope with being here, with the differences that are between gray beings and us. And also the Greys were already partly related to us to begin with, and were involved in our own evolution and lopping off dead unhelpful branches in our evolution and helping us, nurturing the good ones to just get us here. I've been told life is common in the universe, but the spark of life is not. And it's something older cultures do to younger planets. If you can think of the expansion of space and how planets is just older than others, it's just a fact. So are the cultures, and so is the evolution. It's normal to help planets along and to create new life and to nurture it. It's just like a science project that is common and approached differently by different species. And we are one of those. And we've just got to a point where we're facing our own immolation from our own stupidity, and also from being misled by beings here that feed off our negative energy. And so the worst of us represent humanity over again, as we're seeing this week with the terrible things in the news. And combined with other beings that are here that just want to take us. They just want us gone. And they want this planet. And so at that tipping point, at the change, the hybrids and the abductees will awaken and will help the rest of humanity to deal with a paradigm shift. And it's dimensional. We are trapped in a 3D prison that's three-dimensional. And as much as there is a reality that has entropy in nature, that is fact. Everything you know, as much as you might want to believe whatever you want to believe, you hold a tomato in your hand long enough, it'll rot. I mean, that's life and death, and we're part of that. But our consciousnesses are trapped in that reality, and in their 5D, as people have called it, their dimension at least, they're not limited by time. They can move freely backwards and forwards, and they are sort of never in one place or time exactly. They choose to be. So they have physical bodies, but only to the extent that they want to use them. It's like getting in your car to go to the supermarket. You don't live in your car. Your mind is far more important. So your life, going about your business, is more important than your life as a driver. And so that's how they are with their bodies. And
do they have like multiple type of bodies for different types of situations?
Great question. I don't know. That would be a closet full of bodies.
Yeah.
I really don't know, but my feeling is they just inhabit a body for like a very long time, like 1,000 years, like much longer than us. And the bodies are unimportant to them, but they need them to deal with the physical world around them. And the physical world around them is very important to them, to help other cultures, to learn, to just go to other places and watch, which they can do with their minds, but also to physically be there, to be tactile. And I don't know what other missions they have, what other things they're doing, but it seems to matter to them, you know?
Did you ever find out if there was a certain date regarding that, you know, all the death and blackness that was supposed to come to Earth?
No, I've asked them, they won't tell me. But it's soon. It's not long. In my total, I don't care if I'm totally wrong, but that's on me. It's not on them. My guess is like 5 or 10 years. You know, that's 10 or 15 years. Okay. I think that if you think of the environment, they had models that 50 years from now we're going to run out of water. Those models just keep shrinking. The polar ice caps being gone, those models are shrinking, i.e. becoming sooner. The shorelines receding. That also the model, they just, you know, they're getting quite dramatic within about 10 years from now. I think that given that those sorts of things, and the fact that we have now just got past the point where we could actually do anything about the environment. Okay. We didn't do it. We had our chance, and it's now too late. This is mainstream science saying this. Yeah. We have now gone past the point where we can actually stop it. All we can do is try to temper it.
Well, remember like 20 years ago, you know, like 25 years ago, they said like in 20 years there won't be any petrol left, and we still have loads of that. So I try to keep an open mind.
I know. It's like sci-fi movies. They always say, you know, Blade Runner is going to happen in 1999 or something. Yeah. You know? So I could be totally wrong. I really don't know, but I don't think that we have a terribly long time. Well, here's one way that I could be totally wrong about the timing is they've said it's got to get a lot worse before it gets better. Now, just supposing there is no nuclear holocaust, one reason that could be possible is well, there is video you can see on YouTube, which of course is always suspect, but then if we say that about every piece of video and some of them are legitimate, we will never ever find the truth. You have to at least kind of like take a cross section and try to figure out what might be possible. and also look at the sources. When some of the sources are military, US Navy and Air Force, there's multiple ones of UFOs zapping, like small dot of light coming up and then a beam of light hitting the nose of a missile, and then it's basically just dead. That's a famous one.
Yeah.
And that was an Air Force general talking about it on TV. I mean, like, there's some pretty solid stuff, as well as the stuff the New York Times released from the Air Force pilots. I mean, there's some bits and pieces there. And one of the things that does seem to happen a lot is sightings of UFOs over nuclear power plants. And not power plants, I'm wrong, missile silos. The fact that in conjunction with the sightings, all the warheads go dead. And on tests that they go dead, and there are sightings of UFOs concurrent with that, in, nearby or around about that time. So there's a whole mishmash of things that leads me to theorize again that they would stop a nuclear bomb. Yeah. They have said that to me, that and to others, that when we blew up, we tested the atomic bomb in White Sands, and when we did detonate 2 in Japan, it's felt across the universe. It's not like radio waves go across the universe. SETI uses them in hopeful, chance of saying howdy to aliens. It just, everything is connected. We're learning more about dark energy and dark matter, and how there is no gaps in space. It's kind of like a solid, and everything, it really is connected. We just don't understand it. So the nuclear blast damages other planets, damages other ways of being. Perhaps another thing they told me is that they don't draw a difference between science and spirituality, or science and metaphysics. It's like you use a laser light, or an auto garage door that you hit a little remote, and then the door opens. You show that to someone from the Middle Ages, they would shit themselves, and they would say it's magic, right? Well, a lot of the things that just sound like, my God, that doesn't match physics, that's not scientific, this guy's a whack job, that's just stuff we haven't figured out yet. But also, it's that metaphysics, telepathy, telekinesis are just things of everyday life, and they're not fringe science. Meanwhile, piloting a ship that can make sharp turns at 1,000 miles an hour or 2,000, I don't know, the way people are reporting, using plasma vortexes and a Horus in the center, and doing things like that is like, sounds crazy to us, but we haven't learned it yet. Things that are now normal were considered crazy 50 years ago. Sure. The laser light's a good example. That's like, show Marilyn Monroe a laser light, she would think it's magic.
Did they ever show you how to pilot a craft?
No, but I've seen the controls one time. They're like a bank of hieroglyphs, and they're in like pale colors. There's a screen above it that's just Isdal, and it's big. It's just the whole wall, and then there's a bank that comes out, and the panel is like, and it's in the same dome-shaped room. It's as though it's like an all-purpose room on the small craft. It's not like the motherships that people say they've seen, the big triangular craft that are the size of a football field and all that. I've only seen the small craft, and they were like hieroglyphs, and they were pale colors, like pale green, like really, really pale. Like when you have a light behind something and it's really, really light, and pale, like periwinkle, saffron, light blue, like really, really pale, and shapes like a triangle with 3 lines through it, or a semicircle, and just things that look like icons, but not like we have an icon and it's like a triangle with an exclamation point in it. I mean, it's like trouble, it's danger. Okay. There are our own, ways of using things we recognize, like a road sign and a piece of the alphabet. That one is a good example, actually. Okay. But with theirs, they just have abstract shapes that must mean something to them. Yeah. They told me that symbols, one symbol can convey something that would be pages of text to us, pages of subtle text, not just pages of scientific algorithms or something, scientific theorems or an algorithm or something. But there is a way you can imbue an image with a psychic meaning that everybody knows by learning that and knowing what that image is. And they don't learn by reading a book or looking at something on a screen. They learn from birth with just like a download, and they know it all, just like a computer knows instantly. And by the way, the embryos in the tanks on the ships have tubes that go down into them. And the tubes are partly for nutrients. They're in like a blue, turquoisey blue, very dark blue liquid that's almost got a turquoise tinge translucency on their bodies. And they have the tubes are feeding information. So when they're a little baby and they're finally born, and they ask the abductee mother to nurse the baby and just give it some love, because the babies are half human and are freaked out and emotional and need emotions, whereas the beings are operating this whole procedure are like, what the fuck, why are they so emotional? They just don't know how to deal with that. Okay. And by the way, they don't know how to deal with it with the hybrids. They have a real problem with hybrids having emotions, and that's a whole soap opera that goes on for them up there. But those little babies know quantum theory. They know stuff that would be like somebody who's got an MA now. Okay. They know a lot, and then they just have to learn the business of who's that over there, and all the tactile, environmental in learning, experiential learning after that, and of course presumably more learning. But it's just so different from us. So I'm jumping about here a lot here with the things they've shown me.
Did they ever present to you a hybrid child? Because they usually do that. No. I've been told I've the father of many, but they didn't say how many, and I've met the one many times. So I get the feeling that either she wanted to meet me and the others didn't, or that's the only one they've allowed to meet me. But she is she has emotions, and she's very sensitive, and she's sarcastic, and she thinks my book, where I'm trying to get things right, that book evolved, actually. Just a real, very, very brief side note. I wanted to write the book as a sort of a slam on organized religion initially, that we are, there's very genuine good people that are spiritual people that are being misled by handfuls of people that are using them, and the wars are largely due to religions throughout our history, and that it's a very negative, some negative forces taking advantage of some very good people that squander a very short life on a belief in an afterlife. And I'm an atheist, and so it was a kind of a, back when I drank a lot and I was not as nice a guy as I am now, I like to think. I was certainly a different person, and I that's how the book started, as kind of an FU and a bit of a sarcastic book, and it's evolved into not that at all. I've dropped half the story, and but into something where I want to talk about that moment of awakening and how we need to get to it, and how fucked up things are likely to get before we get there, and what changes need to happen within us to get there. That's what my book is about now. So I've asked them for help, and one of the things that I asked that they don't have names, and they don't use them, they don't need them, they always know who's talking. And so they find our whole business of names quaint. And they let us give them names for the sake of our comfort. Yeah. And I asked the hybrid if she wanted a name, being that she's half human and she wanted to talk to me, or at least bothered to talk to me. And initially she said she didn't need it. And then on another regression, I said, I feel bad that I don't call you by a name. It would help me to call you by a name. Would you mind? And she said, actually, I would like that. And I said, well, do you have a name that you like? And she said, no, I don't really have any opinion on the name. She said, you pick one. Mm. And so I thought about it for a long time, for months before the next one. And I didn't want to call her Zazmat or something spacey and stupid. You know, this is real shit, you know? These are people. All of these beings are people.
so Julia seemed to me like a dignified name that suited her. So I said, do you like Julia? She said, I like it very much. So that's Julia. So Julia said that my book is pretty funny on the things I've got wrong, but it's largely right, and it's right enough. So they're happy with what I'm doing, but they keep saying, right, get back to your book. We need to get you this out there. And it's no accident that a lot of writers have come forward as being experiences with Strieber and a lot of other people, and a lot of scientists that are writers, and a lot of journalists that are writers that have, that there's a whole catalog of them that have then been awakened, and I would imagine have exactly the same background as me, that there are beings come here that's been abducted and has been shown things that they are gradually being revealed to them, and they're serving a greater purpose by helping to, my role in life has become to normalize this conversation. This is why I'm talking to you. This conversation has to come into the mainstream. It's no good that journalists on the leash of greater, darker powers is forever making, there's a UFO sighting over the White House. And they go, oh, it's like, it's goofy. They can never do it with a straight face. Even the stuff that the New York Times released a few years ago was reported in mainstream media, the rest of the things apart from the New York Times, with a smirk, and a giggle. It's like it can no longer be that. This is serious. This is our future. And it's our history. We've always been contacted by beings. There's always been other beings here. And we need to wake up. We need to wake up.
Yeah.
And we need to talk about this before it's too late. I mean, for one thing, we could be being used by negative forces, and maybe we could have some defense if we just stop being little babies about it and actually talked about it. And cowards. And being scared of what our neighbors think, or our friends think of us, or our boss thinks, we have to face this, and it's being gradually released by, say, the New York Times, who have also been part of the whole system that suppressed it, and so on. And I just feel that we have to get this out there. So one other thing about my book, sorry, I just wanted to say, and I'm not plugging my book per se. It's not even out yet or anything. But I had been confused about the Greys' hands since day one. Since I saw that one 20 years ago now, 25 years ago now. No, 27 years ago now, I saw that Grey. Does it have 3 fingers or 4? And does it have a thumb? I just can never get it right. And I keep thinking I saw 4 fingers, and I think, no, I saw 3 fingers. And it's like part of the whole fogginess and the fact that it's a mental overload. Another thing that happens to a lot of experiences, and happens to me a lot, is there's periods where you don't see their faces, they're blurry, and then you see them again. And it's just because they're trying to sort of not overload us. Anyway, their hands, I asked, like, can you show me your hand? And I want to know how it works. And this was the small white Grey that I'm very fond of. I feel a real kinship with it. And people say they're robots. People say that they're just slaves, and they're kind of a worker class in the sense that they serve these other elder Greys and Mantids and the hybridization program, but they have free will, they have souls, as do all these beings. And they this one, I feel really close to it. It's been very patient with me and shown me things, and I've been very face-to-face close with it. And there've been times when I've been distressed by things, and it's put its hand on its arm, it's put its hand on top of my hand, and I asked if I could understand how its hand worked. And first of all, I saw 4 fingers, and then I saw 3 fingers. And I said, why now I'm even more confused. Why did I see 4? And they said, the elder beings have 4 fingers, and the Grey small ones have 3. But of course, there's many different kinds of Greys, so there's probably some of each, maybe more fingers, I don't know. There are so many different kinds of what we call Greys. It's very ignorant of us to just call aliens Greys. I mean, they're different species who look alike, because some things are common. Bipedality is common, large brains are common for obvious reasons. And those black eyes must be of use to them for some reason. The hands, anyway, it showed me, I was standing in the usual dome-shaped room, and there was a silvery table, the one I've been on. And there was a a silver ball about so big, about the size of grapefruit, or an orange, and it was like smaller than a grapefruit, the size of an orange, and it was not shiny, it was matte, and it was silver, and it was just sitting on the table. It wasn't rolling it or anything, and it just went like this. I'll do it again. It just went like this, and then what have I got? Nothing to hand. Then the ball just floated up and just did that, and then it did like that. And when it brought its fingers down, it had very long fingers that just sort of dropped it. If you had like tubes of plasticine and you let go of them, they'd go like that, and they would just adhere to it evenly. There's no knuckles, and it's not even like a bendy straw with anything. It's fluid. And it just like draped over it, and they use the outer fingers like a thumb, so they don't need a particular thumb. If they need to, for instance, hold something and then do something else, they could on either end of it. They just do that, and their hands, their palms are much longer than ours, like proportional to my hand. Their palm is that long, and then their fingers are very long. So they have like very, very long looking hands, and their arms are longer than ours proportionally to the bodies, and their legs are shorter than ours. So if you can put that together. And it held the orb, and then it let go, and then the orb floated down. And then it showed me, I said, what are the indentations on the ends of your fingers? And they have like like not suction cups, they just go in. And they're tubular, so there's like a round circle with an indentation. And I said, what are they? And they said, it's to calm people. It's for many purposes. When they take people, they do this, and then you feel very calm, and you start floating up, and you float up through the window and so on. And they also do it when you're up there, when you start to get distressed, and they can also use it to connect with your mind, to draw information or to give you information. It can be used for multiple things. Oh, by the way, the staring procedure that the Mantid was doing and that the Grey was doing is very common, and it's where they literally read your mind. They just download the whole lot from everything you've ever experienced up to date, and they just grab it. And another thing about that first regression, I had zero interest in Mantids. I was only writing about the Greys in my book, and I based it on about a handful of regression transcripts I'd read. I'd not read a great deal. I'd read enough for my book and moved on. I was pretty cold about it. You know, I was an atheist and just not really, I still am an atheist, but I was very, very just detached from the whole discussion. And the one thing I was really not into was Mantids. I thought they were probably made up, or just something that perhaps they made you think you saw, because they're terrifying. We're scared of roaches. You know, you get a 5-inch flying roach like they have in Japan, you're like, ugh! You know. So I figured maybe that's just something to just keep us in our place and make us scared. And I just wrote them off, didn't think about them, didn't write about them at all. And then I'm face to face with one, and I've since read very recently, years later, this was all in 2016, the first regression, the Mantid to cock their necks at a right angle to their body. This is their body, and then they will put their head like that. And that's something other people have experienced, and that's what this one did. And the Grey didn't. The Grey had to lean over. And it actually had to levitate over. Why would I be aware of that? Now, that's little things like that have really helped me not think I'm completely crazy, even if everyone watching this thinks I'm crazy. You know, it's like little facts here and there make me go, wow, all right, now, how did that happen? You know, why would I have thought that? And there's been actually lots of those over the years. Now, I think I've wandered off the plot a bit. The hand. Then it opened its palm and showed me the center of its hand, and it didn't have lines like on my hand, but it had a dip. Their skin, by the way, that is really smooth and putty-like. It's a little bit clammy, like putty is, cool but not cold. And that's just the small white Greys. At one point, I was very distressed, and the Mantid being, when I was taken up, put its hands out and held my hands. And I was too feeling this love coming out of the mantid being. Oh, another thing that happened on the first regression is a dot of white light just came out of the mantid being's forehead when it was standing at my feet, and just teeny tiny dot. And it wasn't like a long beam, it was on its own. It just moved and came out and went into my forehead. And I felt calmer, and just a feeling of love. But another time I was very distressed, and it held my hands. And then I felt that my body walked away from my body while it was still holding my hands. And I went and laid on a table, and the small white gray came over and put its hand on my arm. And then they gave me an electric shock kind of feeling that was so intense. I was laying on the floor in my real, here physical body. And I was shaking so much, I was bouncing off the floor. It was like a real electric shock. They just filled me. It went from my hands, and then just went all the way through me, and even in my head. And it was really intense. And then about a week later, I realized I'd been dealing with some things at work, stresses very differently. I was feeling overwhelmed prior to that, and health problems in my family, and just different things that were really stressing me out. And I realized I'd dealt with several things in a row that week really differently. And it was only then, about a week later, I realized they did something to me to make me calm. And ever since then, I've remained that way. I've just been calm about things. I still lose my temper sometimes, and so on. But I mean, I'm able to be calm about horrible things, and more than I was before. So that's another one of the ways that they help. But what it showed me with its hand, the small white gray, was it put its hand on my forehead, and then I just moved through space, and I was moving through space, and it showed me something. And I moved through space, and then I was moving across a planet. They showed me their homeworld, or the homeworld of this being, or perhaps the group. I don't know, to be honest with it. It was just this being, or the elder greys and this being. But I was just within the atmosphere. I didn't see the planet coming, and I'm just moving along through these canyons. And the canyons are red stone, like traffic light, no, like fuchsia, very bright, pinky, purpley red, but more red than fuchsia, but on the fuchsia end of red, and black and gray, these rocks. And the sky is periwinkle, and it had two suns in it, and the light from the suns was a bluish light. It wasn't like our light. It doesn't look like our sun, not golden. And it was smaller. It was like big stars. And there were domes, and they were milky, like you could see what was in them, and you could see through them to another dome behind it. And they were huge, the size of 200 or 300 yards across, I guess, like big. I guess that's huge to me. And within it were adobe-like buildings that were very irregular. They were clustered, and they were built at odd angles, and they all had rounded corners. They had rounded doorways, and everything on the craft is rounded. There's no corners, not even at the bottom where the floor meets the bottom of the disc. Everything, there's no corners anywhere. Nothing has a corner. Everything is soft. Even the rectangular table, there's nothing you could bang your hand on and hit a corner. The buildings were like very much like adobe buildings, but in the Southwest, adobe never goes above 2 stories typically. Okay. These were like 4, 5, 6 stories, irregular, and they were they weren't leaning out like cubes, but they were like cubes on top of each other and very haphazardly done. And they were made from a sort of stone that was from the red rocks. They were a pinkish browny gray, a pinkish gray is a better way to put it, a dark pinkish gray. Some windows were like a rounded rectangle, some were round, some were ovals, but there was a symmetry to them. There weren't any leaning ovals. There was doorways, but there was no furniture in the rooms. I went in through the dome with this gray, and we just floated. It was next to me, and then we were standing in a room, and it was on about a 3rd story. I think it was a 3rd story, and it was the top of this little cluster, and there were other clusters around that were bigger, and it had a couple of windows, and it had nothing in it except a small table that was literally like what you might call a nightstand, really, but it was just shaped out of the wall and soft, and about 2 feet high at the most, and it had a lip along it of blue light on just the outer edge of it, and it said touch it, and I went to forward touch it now, and then it said no with your mind, and that's like the third time they got me on that one. and then this wall of bluish white light just filled the room and cut the room in half, and we were standing right next to it, and it had symbols all over it, like hieroglyphics, just like the ones on the craft. One of them was a triangle with lines, wavy lines. Others like it, what seemed like pretty sci-fi alien to us, but I mean, I guess they were alien, and they were there, and they said touch one, and this time I knew to touch it with my mind, and I did, and it sort of, all the others weren't sort of there anymore, and it was just that they were a bluish white light, apart from the soft blue light. They were more distinct, and it became the only one I could see. And I think it was, I know it had a circle in it. I wrote it down at the time, but I mean, I have recordings of the regressions that I've typed out, so I just don't remember right now. But it was, I touched this symbol, and it was either a semicircle within a circle or something that involved a circle. And then suddenly the Grey and I are just hurtling along this tube, and it's a tube of light that has light going that way, not like rings, not like a spiral, and not like a tube of rings. The light went that way, and it was just a bit bigger than me. I could stand comfortably in it, and the Grey is on my left, and we're just like standing, just whizzing on. And when you go down the slides at the water parks, and the ones that are closed, you can really do some loops. It was those kinds of crazy loops, except for we're just standing, and there was no nausea. And then it said, touch it. And they said, and I said, why? And he said, touch it to stop. And so I think I put my arm out. I can't remember, but I know I with my mind also, I just picked an arbitrary point. And when I picked it, suddenly there's no tube, and we're just standing in a different adobe room, but this one is an actual adobe room on the Hopi Reservation. And I know where we were in Shungopavi on Second Mesa was the 3 mesas on the Hopi Reservation, and Oraibi is the oldest one. And they're like long fingers. They're like three long fingers. They're like islands, up very high, very slender. And they have like tabletop farms of like zucchini and tomatoes and things, and squash. And they, for some reason, I just sensed this was Oraibi. And I said, is this Oraibi? And it said, yes. And I said, when is this? And they said it said 1873. And I was aware I was very tall and thin. I was taller than the Grey, and I had long hair, and I was young and fit, and my skin was dark. And I sensed I was Navajo. And part of the reason for that is they're a lot taller than the Hopi, and they're often slimmer than the Hopi. And the Hopi are sort of heavier set. But I just sort of knew it. And then I just broke into a run. I could see furniture in the room. I could see like just some sort of a table and some bowls on it, and something that looked like a table. I mean, I don't remember what it was. It might have been a shelf, but it had something on it in there. And I just left the room and broke into a run. And then I'm running as fast as I can. And that feeling of running you have where you can't feel your legs anymore. They're just going on autopilot, and it's wonderful. And if you put your arms out, they just sail, that lovely feeling of running it as fast as you can. And I was just running along the edge of the mesa. And the mesas are quite big, but you can't run in forever. So you're going to go right off the end. So there might have been a sense of daring to it in this young man. Or I might have been running the other way, inland, you might call it, like inland from the edge of the mesa. But I just kept running and running and running. And as I was running, I got into this high, and suddenly I was in the tunnel, and I was flying along in the tunnel as the young Navajo. And the Grey said, you could do this when you were that young Navajo. you could reach us and meet us in the tunnel. And that young Navajo, in its own vision quest of running, and running is part of the Navajo culture. It's sort of one of the things that is alongside spiritual things and alongside the sand paintings and other beautiful things they do. Running is just part of the culture. It's very respected and it's just a thing. So all the pieces started to come together, you know, that it was something this Navajo could do. And one other thing about that is I had a dream when I was in London before I left to come to the States, like a year or two before I left, before I even thought about doing it. And in that dream, I was a young Indian male. Indian is not the right term, and Native American male. And I didn't know what tribe I was, except that I was very hungry and very lonely and just exhausted. And I walked up to a white chapel, wooden chapel, a single story chapel about 50 feet long, pretty small, with a second story bell and clocked bell tower of some kind, and a little shed area to the left. And it was on a weird angle, like if you are the Native American looking at I have Native American friends from living in Santa Fe for years, and a friend of mine who always called himself as a drunk Indian. You know, it is wrong for us to say it, but I feel bad saying it. Native American. If you're from the Native American's perspective in this dream, the church is leaning like this, and there's a cornfield here, also at an angle. It's weird. Like, how could that be? And the Native American goes up to I go up to the church, and I get their attention, and this woman comes to the door in a bonnet and an apron, dressed straight out of like the 1800s or 1700s perhaps, and she's terrified of me, but can see that I'm lonely, scared, and I'm harmless, and I'm just gesticulating that I'm hungry and I need food, and she's saying she can't, and I just keep on begging, and then she says okay, and I get the feeling she's going to go get food, and then this man comes, and she's in her 50s and so is he, or old at least for those days, and he's in a like a black bow tie and a black jacket and white shirt, and I get the feeling he's the priest, whatever he's wearing, and he is livid. His rage at seeing me there is so intense, and he hates me, and he's just shouting at me and waving at me, and just shoos me away, and I run. And that's the end of the dream. Well, when I was on the buses traveling around to write my book in northern New Mexico, the bus came around a bend, and I noticed there's a cornfield on a hill. I thought, who the hell would plant a cornfield or a field of something tall? I'm not that very versant in those things. And it's on the side of a hill. Like, why would you have a field on the side of a hill? As I come around the corner, there's the church. And it was in northern New Mexico, and it was there, this white wooden chapel at this absurd angle. I mean, the whole building is in an angle. I don't know what it looks like inside. And then it was there. The bus took about 30 seconds to pass it, or less. It feels longer in the experience, doesn't it? And there it was. And the only reason I'm digressing is that I think in the dream I'd accessed a regression, a past life experience of being this Navajo. And the Navajo had got as far as northern New Mexico, which is quite conceivable. And so I've been shown, I used to laugh at reincarnation. I've been shown that. I used to laugh at God, and I'm still an atheist, but I've been shown the source. So there's definitely an energy force that unites the universe. And they've told me about that, and it's in us. We are it. And it's the creative force of the universe, but it's not a God with a beard sitting on a throne. It's not male. It's just the energy. It's like the force in Star Wars. There's a couple of things sci-fi got right, and so there is a force. There is, an energy. And that's, I think, the greatest hits of my experiences.
You sent me a drawing of the Orion constellation with a teardrop.
Okay. they showed me a symbol, and they said, "This is your symbol." And I asked why, and they said, "This is just you." And they've repeatedly told me, "You are left." And I said, "Well, because I used to be left-handed, I was switched over." And they said, "No." And then they don't elaborate. But they, in this symbol, it's a teardrop shape, and it's a gray opacity that gets thinner and thinner until it's clear at the bottom, but you can see it just goes to a point as it fades away. And within it are 3 teardrops. And from your point of view, the one on the left is gold, like an amber color, and the other 2 are silver. And they're kind of solid at the top and get a little fainter at the bottom, but they're like, you might think, metallic shape. And that's it. That was the symbol. And I drew it immediately after the hypnosis, and then I made a version of it in Photoshop to sort of remember it. And it only last year, this was several years ago, and then only last year, I realized when you look at Orion, and I'm putting the pieces together, they showed me Orion. The star, the top 3 stars of the Orion, I don't know what it's called, the Orion star pattern. The one on the left, Betelgeuse, is gold. It's very bright orange. And then the others are bright in different sizes, but they're all silvery white, just like regular stars. And I thought, why is the one on the left gold? And they show me that image is the 3. And then I put that over a map of the constellation, and it's a loose fit. I mean, it's vaguely that shape, with the Orion's belt being where they all come together. Or if you go further, it could be M42, M24,
I think, yeah.
which is a black hole, right? And it's part of the nebula, I think. I'm really no astronomer. I'm not very scientific. So I don't really understand beyond that, except for they're showing me clues. And in more recent regressions, the last one in December, I asked them direct questions and got direct answers, and they want me to know. And I got the feeling of urgency. That's what makes me think we don't have long before some shit's really going to hit the fan, is they felt it was time for me to wake up and get on with it and stop. I kind of fell out with them because I've read that they've helped family members of people who have health problems, or helped people experiences themselves who have health problems. And my wife has a serious health issue that causes her a lot of pain. It doesn't stop her working. She's an actress. She works professionally, and it's never stopped her doing a show. So I don't want to put the word out there. She's not disabled or anything, but she's in pain sometimes. And I just like, well, can you please help her? And they just said we can't. And even with the point of her, she's pretty long suffering with all this crazy alien shit, and is sort of trying to be supportive, but believes that there's something out there, and has said, I welcome that. If they can help me, I welcome it. I give you permission, tell them that. And I'm saying it, hello, I give, and they still haven't. And they've said she's getting closer by meditating, and she is, and they're helping her in little ways, but they still seem kind of like, come on, man. And it really fractured the relationship. And I didn't do regressions for like a year and a half. And I sort of fell out with them, even though it's just, I'm very lucky to have this experience. I felt like I don't care anymore, And over time, I've realized I have to try to understand them as aliens, because their philosophy is alien. Their prime directive application is not even like the prime directive in Star Trek. It's kind of like it, but it's deeper and more complex. And the ways that they can get around it and move within it and so on are complex. And it's an alien culture. You go to India and talk to someone from India, things that we would think are the same are not, in terms of how we approach our lives. And that's wonderful. Change and difference is wonderful. But whatever I didn't like about their philosophy, I had to just give them the benefit of the doubt, at least for a while, and give it another try. And I have. And when I came back, there was a sense of urgency. And this time, the Mantid, the elder gray, the small white gray, and the hybrid, Julia, and the Orion being were all together, along with many other beings in a field of light. And they've appeared in a field of light before when they tell me, you don't need to see us. It's not important. Right now, one of us is in one ship, one of us is in another, and you're in another to meet with us, and another is on its own planet. We're all meeting with you together. So it's not essential you see us all standing in a room. You've got to get over that. And so in this one, I was seeing many, many beings, and I sensed that they were all there. I could just make them out. The one I could make out most was the Mantid and the Orion Grey for some reason. But I just knew that they were all there in this field of light, and their message was urgent. You all need to wake up, and Adam, you need to finish your book, and you need to talk about this. You need to get this stuff out there, and it's serious. Humanity's in trouble, and that's what makes me think it's soon. But I don't know what soon is. If they can do one thing, they can be very patient with time. Time is different to them, and what seems insufferably long to us is nothing to them. It's the necessary extent of time it takes for us to get to that understanding, you know? So anyway,
you sent me pictures of scoop marks and whatnot. When did those
thank
happen?
you for bringing that up. Yeah, because it's a complex thing in the sense that why would I have bruises and scoop marks when these are my friends? I feel like they're my family. They've said they're my family in the sense that we're all related, and they coming here with love, and they're trying to be supportive to me and are being supportive to me. It feels like family. And why would they then hurt me? Or how necessary is it to be cavalier with my poor little body, you know? And they've explained that the bruises are part of the business of taking me apart, putting me back together again. They use that phrase a lot. Another phrase they use a lot is the bigger picture. You have to see the bigger picture. And that's what they do to sort of shut me up sometimes when I'm going down a tangent that is basically just fussy and detail oriented, that is not really sticking to the point of what they want to teach me, you know? So the taking apart and being put back together again can really mess with human bodies. It involves radiation, it involves the atomic levels, and in women, it gives creates autoimmune disorders in men and women, particularly women. It creates a lot of problems, women's problems that are very painful. I mean, it creates problems that are terrible. There are a lot of problems that come from this, and those are necessary evils of something that's being done to save our lives. So the bruises are a result of that process, being like getting bashed about in some sort of elevator that's that's bashing you about to get from 1 to 5, you know. I've woken up with a triangular scoop mark that's curved at the top many times, like 3 times that I can remember. So I don't know how many times, in my center of my chin always. And I've woken up with 2 dots that are always a centimeter apart, and they're deep. Like if you were to get a corkscrew and shove it in, about that diameter at the point, but they don't scab. Neither does the scoop mark. The scoop mark forms a scab that just heals over about 2 days, and the dots just fade away. They're like surgically made. And I've had them on my knee and my upper leg, and there's also a ring of about this big. I guess that's meaningless because you're just looking at my hand, about an inch across, a little bigger than an inch. And it's a purplish bruise with white dots that are raised in it, as though I tried to think what could do it. Like if you get the plug of an amp has like the male side with the 5 prongs, and then the female side that's basically has the holes in it. If you were to take the female side and press it on my arm hard enough, you would make that image with slightly raised dots. Except for this is way bigger than those amps. I've never seen an amp that big, and I have no access to one if I'm a sleepwalker. I mean, I don't know how they got there. I've had that twice, and it's purplish, and it hangs around for about a week. And one time it had a scar, a bruise around it that was like it looked to me like a hand, maybe, or something, because it's so spread out. But it could have been from anything. It could have been from something bashing it. I don't know. But it was a sort of butterfly shape around it. And you have those images. And another time with the bruises, this was what helped me get to the first regression was the bruises, because I woke up with the bruises one morning, and it was when I was writing the book, and it was when I was reading about the stuff, and I was beginning to be curious. Like, in fact, it was before I became curious. Maybe I'm in one too, you know. I woke up and I had this spectacular set of bruises on my leg. It was on my upper thigh, my ass, and my side, my thigh, my side, the back of my leg, around my top, my bum, and the side of my bum, and the top of where my hip is had a bruise that was raised like big, like half an egg, and it was longer than an egg. It was about 5 or 6 inches long, and it was this really nasty bruise. I mean, I don't know how a bruise would even be raised, and it was purplish, and I took photos of it because I thought I want to figure out what that is sometime, and then probably didn't think about it anymore. I didn't think about it. I forgot about it. I forgot about the photos, the weird thing that happens to experiences. And it was a couple of years later, I was thinking I should get a regression and figure this out. And I remembered those photos, and I went back and found them, and then I looked at them, and I'm like, holy shit, it looks like a hand with really long fingers. But actually a hand that couldn't be my hand from anywhere I could get to. I'd have to be like this. And a contortionist, and also have a hand that's bigger than mine with longer fingers, unless I dragged it, I suppose, but it's just basically impossible. So I put that down to an abduction, and the hypnotherapist used that as an anchor point to just think I didn't have a date. I should have looked at the date on the photos. I would have had a date, but we didn't have one in the regression. She just helped me to try to remember the kind of night beforehand. I had some wine with dinner, but not much. I wasn't drunk. Nothing eventful had happened that night. It was a normal night. I always have a glass of wine with dinner, and or did. I've quit drinking, and nothing eventful. And then just waking up in the morning, looking at the bruises, and then she regressed me back to when I was asleep and just put me to sleep during that night. And that's when I woke up on the table. So that was how she got me there. And I had it explained to me that it's just not to hurt us. It's not because they're abusing us. It's because it's collateral damage of the process. Our bodies are fragile, and it's pretty brutal what they have to do to take us apart and put us back together again.
Adam, you told me earlier on about a pretty interesting story that happened to you while you were in Mexico. Can you get into that?
Yeah, this is a bit of a funky one. I was on holiday in Mexico and didn't drink any water, as I'd been, told, and didn't have any ice. And then on the last morning had some fruit at a restaurant, and then at the airport was just freezing cold while I was standing with putting as many layers of clothing on as I had, standing outside in the sun. It was baking hot, and I was freezing cold. And when I got home, it was another day or two of this, so another sort of day and a night of this. And my wife was like, that's it, we're going to the hospital. So we went to the ER, and they put me in, and I was on a saline drip, and I'd had some kind of food poisoning from the water. And the reason this is a funky one is, at first I was somewhat delirious. I wasn't hallucinating. I wasn't, far gone. But I mean, I was really out of it, and then I must have been on some meds. So if you want, you could just write this one off as not being true. But there's a couple of reasons why I think it warrants mentioning, and that is that I was, in there for 2 or 3 days, and towards the end of my stay there, I was visited by 2 men in black suits who looked the same height. They looked the same, and they had single-breasted button-up black suits and black ties, and they just stood at the end of my bed. And I asked them what they were doing, and they said they were from a government agency monitoring cross-border infections. They picked up their chart and just stood there looking at me for a couple of minutes, and then left. There was no more conversation, and they just stared at me. And the whole Men in Black thing is a big joke. I know they're really funny, really awesome movies, but at that time, this was about 2006. I had zero interest in alien stuff. I'd already seen The Grey Alien, but I'd written it off and never thought about it. And I had no interest. I didn't know about the whole Men in Black thing. I only knew about the movies. I didn't know they were even based on sightings of these mysterious Men in Black. So I had nothing in my subconscious about it. And the weird thing from the experience is their faces are blurred, like they either were blurred or I couldn't see them. And I know in a lot of the regressions, faces come in and out of focus because they try to block it, try to sort of introduce information gradually. So the fact that I saw two men and I wasn't hallucinating, I wasn't really legitimately hallucinating, at all. I was just out of it. So I can't have actually imagined two full-sized men standing in my bed, at the end of my bed. And also the details of the Men in Black phenomenon, this weird thing, were unknown to me at that time. So it's only later I thought, hang on, that's something weird that happened, that I'm putting the pieces together. So that was an experience that is an outlier because it's weird. And I know a lot of people laugh at that, but it happened.
Were they wearing like a top hat?
No, they didn't have hats on. They just, I don't really remember. Their faces were blurred. I know they had dark hair. I don't think they had hats on, but I don't remember, to be honest.
Did they appear to be old, young?
They looked like they were about 30, both of them. They just looked like, healthy, slimly built men, about 5'8" or 10, tall, but not as tall as me.
So visually, were they identical? Because they
looked identical to me, and I can't remember whether I saw their faces, but I don't remember it now, or whether their faces were blurred. But my impression was they were like identical twins. They didn't look like, you get two people enter your room. They look very different. They have different builds, different heights. It's very rare to get two people who look the same. So that's another weird element.
Okay, that's strange. And it is strange that you'd get this type of visitation from, government agents just to see it, your stats at the hospital.
Yeah, like suppose there is a cross-border infectious diseases agency or some wing of some agency. They can get the data digitally. They don't need to come in and read the paper chart at the end of my bed that doesn't even have all of the information. And meeting me is not going to make a blind bit of difference. I couldn't tell them anything. Yeah. Everything they needed to know would have been in the doctor's reports. So there's just no reason why that could be what it seemed to be.
And when it comes to food poisoning, at least, at least for tourists, it's a common thing. When I went to Agadir in Morocco, I was like, after like my week's tour, I ate the fruit all week and I wasn't sick, so I thought I'd be okay. But at the end, I started puking my guts out. That's how sick I was. So it's a common thing, really. But to have two government agents wearing what they were like, let's get back to the suits. Was it like a 1940 suit, something oldish?
I know that's what people say. The Men in Black look like 1940 suits. I wouldn't have jumped to that conclusion, but it certainly was a plain black single-breasted suit, buttoned up with a white shirt and a black tie, like a cater waiter would wear. Just very boring and a little bit old-fashioned, but it's more just like boring than anything in my reading of it.
Did they give off anything, like something dark, fearful?
No, but there was a firmness about them. Like I needed to just like do what I was told. I felt it, and that was definitely there. But that could have been achieved by the fact that they said they were government agents, and at that point I didn't have my citizenship. I was a legal resident alien, but I always watch my P's and Q's, and so I probably would have just behaved because of that. So there's some gray areas.
Okay. Well,
one thing. Can I just say one thing, though, that I've read from David Jacobs' books about the Men in Black phenomenon, and from not so much about that, but about the hybrids, he called them in his books, the hybrids that pass for human, that are being integrated here. I think he said it, but it's certainly not my own theory, but it's something I think is probably true, that the Men in Black that people see are hybrids are hybrids that pass for human, checking up on other hybrids that are here, or experiences abductees in some way to fix something, talk about something, bring them something, I don't know, deliver something. They're connected to that. They're not government agents. It's awfully theatrical for the government to do something like that when they can just do that whatever the hell they want.
Wow.
That's my thinking on it anyway.
Yeah. It's a complicated subject. Okay. Well, we've been at this for over 2 hours. Do you have like anything to say to those watching? A closing statement, perhaps?
Just one thing, that this is not oh yeah, there is something. I've already said that this is important, that we need to talk about it, and it's not a goofy subject, and that we have to get real. This is like Native Americans on the coast seeing a shipload of Spaniards arrive over the horizon and going, what the fuck? And then having a mental overload, and then some tribes revering them as gods temporarily, or misunderstanding that, and certainly revering them mistakenly, and just generally totally misreading the situation and being terrified or confused. That's what's happening here. We need to just get real. These are visitors from another shore, and Earth is an island in space, and it's just people coming here. That's one thing. The other thing is, if you have ever seen a UFO, particularly if you've seen one within 100 yards kind of thing, the odds are very high that you're an experiencer too. And I recommend getting regressed if you can, with the proviso that you may encounter negative experiences that are terrifying, or you may encounter good experiences like mine. If you say love and light, get the hypnotherapist to be focusing on that, talking about that through the process, I think you would be safe enough to reach the beings that want to help. And the odds are very high, if you've seen anything, you're an experiencer too. And I encourage people to take a look if they're brave enough. And if you experience something horrible, it's my fault for saying go do it. I certainly didn't put a gun to your head, but I recommend it if you're brave enough.
Beautiful. So again, thank you so much for coming on, Adam. Your attention to detail was really epic today. It really shows that you're an artist. And thank you so much for sharing with the audience the drawings that you gave me. And to those watching, hope you enjoyed today's interview. More interviews coming up. I'm your host, Mr. Grey, and I'll see you guys next time. So take care, everyone.
Thank you so much for giving me this chance.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Grey, and thanks for watching today's episode. If you are an abductee, contactee, or experiencer, and you believe that your story could help others, please feel free to contact me through my YouTube channel email. When it comes to experiencers, the ET phenomena, and the future, remember, truth will out.